Hello, this is Stephen Poe, and I'm going to talk about drip irrigation, specifically how much and how often. Drip irrigation, how much and how often, using the Rainbird calculator. How much? Well, we know watering too little can cause the plants to wilt and die. Watering too much can starve the roots of oxygen, encourage weed growth, and waste water. How often is the irrigation interval, the time between watering, and that's going to be different based on the climate, soil, whether the plants are newly established, well established, or depending upon what kind of plant it is, whether it's a tree, shrub, or perennial. What we want to do is we want to water according to the calculated schedule and then adjust as necessary. Hopefully, we can adjust our water use to give the plant enough to survive, or in some cases, thrive, and not to waste water. If you are designing your landscape from the beginning, lucky you. Identify location-appropriate plants. For this example, we're going to do Sierra Vista, and we're going to take a look at the CALS, the College of Agriculture and Life Science at the University of Arizona publication, and I've got it listed there. The document is titled Sierra Vista Plant List Introduction, and from that document we can pull up the watering interval for newly planted desert and adapted plants. And the basic idea behind this is that we're going to increase the watering interval as the plants become established. So you can see for the summer, in weeks 1 and 2, we'd water every day or every other day, depending upon the plant. And then as we go down through week 7 and week 8, we're going to start irrigating once every 7 days. After week 8, we're going to gradually extend the time between irrigation and that the plants are established. And this might take up to a year to establish for smaller plants, and maybe several years for trees. The point is, we don't want to lose our landscaping. We want to help our landscaping survive in this desert climate. So it's time to ask, how much and how often? Well, probably the easiest thing to do is to work through an example. So I'm going to take an example of each of the following: an orange tree, a Chilean mesquite, a yellow bird of paradise, and an oleander. Keep in mind that an orange tree may not be appropriate for all areas, but I get this question a lot, so we're going to start out with an orange tree. Different CALS publication. This one lists orange trees in Tucson, and it gives you water usage by month. And in July, for a 20-foot tree, the list is for 60 gallons of water per day. That's about 227 liters. So that lets you know, depending upon the irrigation emitters that you use for your drip irrigation system, you would like to place about 60 gallons per day. Now, is this a case of survival or thriving? Well, if we're actually planting an orange tree for production, then we want that orange tree to thrive. We don't want it to just survive. We don't want to have wilting that's going to cause damage or a reduced fruit yield. In this particular case, we'd want to probably consider this for the optimum amount of water, and then slowly decrease over time if we can maintain fruit production. One thing to notice right here is that the drip line of the tree is out where the rain would fall at the edge of the canopy. This is the location that we'd like to actually place our emitters. And when we use emitters, we never want to do plantings, especially sizable plantings, with just one emitter. On a tree like this, we might have somewhere between 4 and 8. This looks like about a 10-foot tree, but for a 20-foot tree, we might even have a few more. So what we're now going to do is we're going to take a look at the online irrigation calculator, and there's several out there. I'm going to use the one that's by Rainbird, and you can see the website address up there. And I'm going to select the Landscape Drip Point Source Emitter Calculation tool. And this is what that tool looks like. There's just a few questions you have to answer. Remember, this is a very generalized calculator just to give you an idea of where you're going to start your design work for your system. It asks you basically 5 very simple questions. The first one is, what is the diameter of the plant canopy? And we said that we were going to use a 20-foot canopy in our example of that orange tree. The next question is, what is the type of environment? What kind of climate? And so I clicked on the help button over there so you could determine what kind of climate you're at. We said that we were going to be doing this for July. Remember, we're going to adjust this application for different times of the year. So is this a hot, warm, or cool environment? So what kind of environment have you got? And I'm going to take a look at our location, which is Sierra Vista, and Sierra Vista in July shows an average temperature of about 92 degrees. So 92 degrees would be hot. So we're going to select the type of environment, hot. The next thing is the plant factor. This is probably the factor that you have the most control over selecting. The thing that might change, the variable that might change the most, is this plant factor. And this plant factor is probably the adjustment you might make based on whether you want the plant to survive or you want it to thrive. In this case, if I want to have orange trees in high production, I want them to thrive. So in this particular case, I'm going to select high. The next question is, what is the estimated system efficiency? And we'd like to think that our system is going to be more efficient than most, but it's probably not. With a typical irrigation system, most systems as installed are going to be somewhere around 90% efficient. And depending upon how good you are at taking care of your system, the maintenance is critical. The maintenance is what's actually going to determine this estimated system efficiency. So probably a good safe start is about 90% for efficiency. And then finally, we're going to answer what is our preferred runtime in minutes per day. Keep in mind that we'd like to irrigate so that we can reach the root zone of our plant. We don't want to do it in multiple short waterings. We want to water long enough duration of time to allow the water to get into the root zone so that we can establish deep roots and that we can have drought-tolerant plants. To take a look at the calculations, and we'd click on the Calculate Recommendation button down below. And this is the printout that you'd get from it. You can see for the plant diameter up here, we've got 20 feet. The environment's hot, plant factor high. In other words, we want this one to thrive, not just survive. Efficiency 90% and 60 minutes. So here's our orange tree. Let's take a look at some of the suggestions. First one up there is for an XB05PC emitter from Rainbird, and it suggests 145 emitters per plant. I don't know what you're going to be doing in your spare time, but probably caring for 145 emitters is not on your agenda of top priority. So take a look down here at maybe some of these other ones. I would probably look somewhere here. In this particular case, a PC07, which would ask for about 10 emitters per plant, and the suggested runtime would be 62 minutes. Now, in this example, we would put about 72 gallons per day on this tree. That's pretty close to the recommendation that we had from the publication that suggested that we do 60 gallons per day. On to the next, we had the Chilean mesquite. The Chilean mesquite, and I did a 20-foot tree for a hot environment, but the difference on this one is plant factor low. In other words, we know that a mesquite tree, especially once it's established, can go a little bit longer in between watering, and it can certainly do with less water. So we're going to take a look at the requirement that they have here, which is 16 gallons per day. So you can see now several different emitters again to run about 60 minutes, 8 emitters per plant. That's too much water for an established tree, but that gives you a starting point, something that you can look at. Next, we were going to talk about a yellow bird of paradise. That's a gorgeous plant for this area. Plant canopy diameter, I put in 10 feet for a hot environment, and a plant factor again of low. with a 90% efficiency and a selected runtime of 60 minutes, you can see that the calculated water use is going to be about 4 gallons per day. Here again, this is too much for an established plant or tree, so you're going to want to trim that down. In this particular case, on a tree or plant this size, I might use either 2 or 4 emitters, somewhere in that neighborhood. Once again, the goal is to be able to at least start the plants at about 4 gallons per day and then cut them down after that. And finally, we have an oleander, and an oleander is going to be, in this case, calculated for a 15-foot oleander, hot and low plant factor, efficiency 90%, and I come up with about 9 gallons per day. Those of you that have taken care of oleanders in this area know that you can probably get by, again, with much less water than that. But if it was me designing this system, again, I would probably have somewhere between 2 and 4 emitters per tree. And this is for something that would be in about the 15-foot height. So to summarize, for a 20-foot orange tree, the recommendation is 72 gallons per day, very high, and that's because we'd want oranges to thrive. For the mesquite, we'd be something less than 16 gallons. For the 10-foot bird of paradise, less than 4 gallons, and for the 15-foot oleander, less than 9 gallons per day. So how much and how often? Well, sometimes less is more, and that's part of the art and the science.